Today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, I'm going to take an episode to focus mainly actually on national type issues. Clearly, there's a lot going on over the last 5-6 days. And because there's so much going on, I'd like to weigh in on it. Now, normally I talk about specifically Kentucky issues because I believe that I have information and takes and viewpoints that you're not hearing anywhere else on Kentucky politics. So I can add to the conversation or even create a conversation in a lot of cases when it comes to Kentucky issues because absolutely nobody's talking about them. However, on the national level, you have so many national commentators and everything else that typically I don't like to weigh in because I personally don't really think I have too much to add to the conversation most of the time. Perhaps I'm wrong. Many people tell me they'd love for me to cover more national politics and get my takes on it. But today I'm going to go ahead and dig into those more national topics because I do think I have something that I can add to the conversation. Before I dig down into it, please make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, please leave a 5-star review. And if you can and are able to, write a review as well. I know on Apple Podcasts, for an example, you can write and leave a review. Doing so helps people find the show. So please, if you can do one thing, if you enjoy the show, and I know hundreds of you listen every single day to every episode, please leave a review. It does a big thing for me as far as helping get the show out there, makes it easier to spread it around. But without further ado, let's dig down into it. So on the subject of the attempt itself, it's really hard to explain the level of incompetence here. And so that's going to lead to many different, you could call them conspiracy theories. I'm just going to call them theories at this point because quite literally anything is possible at this point. Almost anything is possible. Of course, the one thing that's not possible, the left has cooked up as a explanation. We'll go into that. But anything is possible for the most part. Because when you look at the story as it's being pushed, I'm kind of piecing it together from different mainstream media sources, right? So this is so far based on mainstream media sources. These are headlines I'm pulling from, not, the far reaches of the web, not just from Twitter or whatever, for those of you who are more skeptical. This is the story as I'm understanding it, piecing together the mainstream media headlines. So the shooter, I'm not even going into whether the shooter was acting alone with others or anything else. I'm just saying this is the mainstream media facts, quote unquote, as we know. Now, I'm not saying I would take this as gospel truth because, of course, media reports things and then they get it wrong. And, I'm citing from places like AP, Washington Post, CNN. I'm choosing a lot of different places, piecing it all together. And so some of this may have changed. May be changing, but this is how I understand it. So the shooter was acting suspicious coming into the event around the metal detectors, and the local police alerted Secret Service and other agencies that were out there to please be on the lookout for this individual to watch him. Apparently, at some point, they lost track of him. He walked up to the barn. He pulled out a rangefinder. He ranged the shot and then walked back to his vehicle, grabbed an AR-15 style rifle, then walked up to the building, which, by the way, is like one of the only rooftops. Like, I don't know if you all have seen an aerial view of this place, but Trump was basically in the middle of a darn field, okay? Like, he's in the middle of a field, and literally hundreds of yards around, there was like only a few buildings. Clearly, if you're going to be a person who's in charge of securing a place, you're worried about, snipers taking shots and assassination attempts and yada, yada, yada. Well, you would go ahead and make sure that roof was secure. But anyway, so he ends up climbing up onto like one of the only roofs that are around. Well, by the way, apparently they're now getting reports that there was a counter sniper team actually in the building underneath the roof. So he's climbing up the roof, and then there's apparently another sniper team right below him. And so he's climbing up there, and the attendees have noticed him for several minutes at least. I'm seeing 3-4 minutes about the timestamp, yelling out to the police, pointing them out to him. At one point, a police officer climbed onto the roof. Now, I've heard he climbed a ladder, or I've also heard that he was standing on another officer's shoulders, at which point The shooter then turned and pointed his gun at the officer, so the officer retreated, and then the gunman continued his climb and then took the shots at Trump. The sniper team behind Trump reportedly had the shooter in their crosshairs for several minutes and was asking for permission to shoot and didn't receive it. That's why they are able to fire back just so quickly, because they already had him in their sights. So that's just leading up to the shooting. Of course, there's all the issues of some handling it of afterwards. Obviously we've seen a lot on some DEI type topics going into Secret Service and some of the other forces, and we'll go into it. But this is just such a colossal failure. I mean, I know the Secret Service does like some other things, but like their main thing is asset protection. That's the main thing they're supposed to do. And it's just like, it's so, what brews up conspiracies in this situation is because it's literally so stupid and so unbelievable, the levels of incompetence. Like any Joe Schmo off the street would intrinsically do a better job of saying, okay, where should we put people to secure? I know, let's put a person securing the roof around the backside of the roofs, if not on top of the roofs themselves, right? It's like the only roof around outside of the other roof, which had a sniper team on top of it. And you've got a lot of people. Why is that counter sniper team under the roof, pointing away from the only other roof that was empty? The only place where a sniper could go. And they're pointed away from it, up underneath, right? It's just such an obvious, just like I said, I'm not particularly trained by Secret Service. I'm looking at the aerial views of the area. There's like 3 rooftops. Like one of the first things you're going to be like, okay, how do we keep guns out of people's hands coming in? So we need to make sure that nobody can get access to the grounds without first going through metal detectors and making sure that they don't have any weapons. And so, we need to set up a perimeter, whether that's fences or gates, but set up a perimeter that's armed, and then make sure we have one solitary entry point. And then we just need to make sure that from the outside, nobody can get a view into the facility without first having to cross through those entry points. So we just need to secure any rooftops outside that protective perimeter. And then that's pretty much it. I mean, obviously you want to make sure bombs and things, bring in bomb sniffing dogs and things, but that's pretty much it. And somehow you just failed on like the basic thing that most of us would point out. And so obviously anything's an option of how this happened. Is it an inside job? Did somebody try to take him out that paid off or is involved with the Secret Service team? What are all our options here? Now, I will say that this could literally just be extreme incompetence. And I could say that this was bound to happen because of what we've been seeing in our country on several aspects of things. First, we've seen people under the Biden administration promoted to the highest levels with a complete lack of ability or skill, based upon simply their gender, their skin color, their sexual orientation. And this is the DEI side of things. In fact, there's a video going around, I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, of the current director of Secret Service talking about how they want women to be 30% of the force. And while women perhaps women can be involved with the investigation side of things, where they're investigating threats, doing intelligence, maybe conducting interviews of people out in the field or what have you, there's one thing that no woman should be involved in, and that is protecting a male protectee. Now, a woman probably there should be a woman or two involved in a female's protective staff, just simply so that way they can go into places like bathrooms and locker rooms and places like that with an individual, because you have certain individuals that, while they don't have a perimeter protective like a vice president or president might, maybe it's the daughter of the president or something like that, and so they need a protective detail as well, but it's not nearly as robust, and so you've only got a few people with them, so you may run a female agents in that situation to, once again, be able to go into bathrooms and places like that without, having to worry about the whole men walking into women's bathrooms, those kinds of issues. But when it comes to a male protectee, there is no reason for a female to be on that detail. Simply put, she is not big enough. Donald Trump's a big guy. You are not big enough. If you are not able to protect at least his vitals, and what I mean is that you're at least able to cover up to his chest vitals without first and be able to surround him in that way, you shouldn't be involved in it. And for those of you who don't quite understand some parts of this, there's different levels of body armor here. And so you could wear like a Kevlar vest, and that may protect you from certain small arms fires. It may protect you from knives and those kinds of things. But without wearing a plate carrier, you're not really protected from really high caliber firearms. But if you have a plate carrier, you can be able to be protected from those high caliber firearms. And so what you'll see a lot of times is that people protecting them, and you'll see this with police and everything else, they will actually have plate carriers on. And those are bulky, those are big, they weigh a lot of weight. And so generally you're not going to see somebody like Trump or the president walking around with a bulletproof vest all the time. That is an actual plate carrier. You may see them with a vest underneath their clothes or something. But anyways, long story short, I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but the point is that you need people who can cover Trump fully with their body. You want them broad, you want them big, you want them able to do that. Women don't fall into that category. It's just the facts. That's just the situation they're in. But yet, despite that, they say, you know what, we want 30% of our force. This is the head of Secret Services. They want 30% of their force women. And unless you're protecting just a whole lot of women with relatively, soft touch security, and unless you just are really trying to fulfill out your investigative side of things, you don't need, like I said, you don't need women involved in the investigative process. So that's one part how DEI kind of affects these things. But the other side is how DEI affects just generally all the other departments as well. I've been to a lot of political events. I one time went to an event down in London, Kentucky area. And at that event happened to be Hal Rogers, happened to be Mitch McConnell, happened to be Cameron was running for office at the time. Kelly Craft was running for office at the time. So you had several of these people here. So you had Capitol Police from over in the Senate there for Mitch McConnell. You had Capitol Police from over in the House there for Hal Rogers because he's the dean of the House, so you get some special protection there. You had Cameron had KSP guard protection, personal protection there, as well as some personal protection from a pack. And then you have Kelly Craft, who had her own protection. And then you also had local police who were there. You had sheriffs who were there. And you had some other KSP officers who were there. And so the point is you've got 6 or 7 different organizations or departments. And that's at a place with just, the minority leader, the dean of the House, and the attorney general of the state, and a billionaire running for office. Like that's just at one of those events. Now imagine something like a Trump event where you're going to have all the local police, the sheriffs, the state police. You're going to have then, Secret Service there. You may even have FBI there. And then you're also going to have probably some private protection groups going on for different individuals that are there that may be high value, whether they're just wealthy, whether they're running for office themselves, whether they for some reason need their own protection. So you got all these different groups there. And there's no coordination between them, but amongst all these groups, you have the opportunity for a lot of incompetence amongst their command structure. And we've recently been seeing calls for things like defund the police. We've been seeing calls for, we need to diversify the police. That's what we need to worry about. We need diversity, and we need to defund them at the same time. You know what we need? We need people who can handle social work more. That's what we need. And so by focusing on that, you're taking away from more so the heroicism, but also you're taking away from focusing on just core competencies, because you only have so much time in the day. You only have the ability. It's hard to say, well, let's do both. Well, you really can't do both. And then it goes back to the heroicism side of things. Just the general social response to policing means you're getting a lot more people who are doing it just because it's a job, and not doing it because they have some higher quality calling to provide safer communities and to protect their fellow man. Because quite frankly, you're going to end up in all these situations where no matter what you do, you could be wrong, and you either end up dead, you end up fired, you end up prosecuted, you could end up in jail. We've seen all kinds of things happen to police officers. And so less and less people are doing it because they believe in it, and more people are doing it simply because it's a job. It's a job, it pays, whatever. But that means they're not going to risk their life for anybody. We saw this with the Uvalde shooting, where the police just kind of stood outside, wiggled their fingers, are like, I don't want to get involved. There's just some kids being shot up. And so you have people that are like, why would I die for you? I don't care about you. And I think that's part of where if the police retreated, pointed gun at, retreated down, instead of returning fire, instead of, a lot of different options there, it's because why should I do this for you? But then you also go into the counter sniper team having him in the sights waiting to pull the trigger. And they're waiting for an okay to shoot because they don't want to make the wrong decision and then end up prosecuted and in jail as well. So even if they do have the heroicism side of things, they're frozen. Even if they have the willingness to actually act, they're frozen by the fear of repercussions of going to jail for the rest of their lives. And so this is where we're at. We have created this policing situation where anybody who's good, who cares, isn't really incentivized to stay in. Those who stay are more worried about getting in jail for the rest of their life than trying to stop something bad from happening, from trying to make a judgment call in a situation. And the end result is this. But it's also the end result, of course, of the kind of rhetoric we've been hearing from the left on Trump for quite some time. I know a lot of people have talked about this, but you can't keep calling the guy Hitler and then expect nobody to do anything about it. Like, that's what happens. There's a big difference between the way the left has handled things politically and how the right handles things politically. For an example, this is a perfect example, okay? Take House District 45. Adam Moore's running in that race. He's a Democrat, and he's running against Thomas Jefferson, the Republican candidate there. Now, I've profiled Adam Moore before a few times on the show because Adam Moore is the member of this far leftism cult called the Science of Mind. And they have a meditation center in Lexington that he attends. It's a cult founded by Ernest Helms, and he attends that every Sunday. He admits to attending that every Sunday. And I've gone into things that they believe in, like attaching electrodes to plants in order to hear their voice, in order to hear their music. They stand up and they read from books, but not the Bible. They do a type of prayer where they're attempting to create their realities. They believe that if they just simply do these prayer treatments, they can end up manifesting their reality to be what they want it to be. It's based upon this idea of leftism a lot. So it's a leftism cult. Now, I've called out that person has bad mental judgment. I've called out that Adam Moore's policies are dangerous in the sense that what he would advocate for involves enforcing this kind of leftism beliefs on people, because it's kind of I need to convert people to my believing side of things when it comes to leftism. And so they'll use the powers of government to force that down. So we're talking about, because he's in this leftist cult, called the Science of Mind, like an actual religious cult here. They listen to a woman named Reverend Rainbow. I'm dead serious. And he's running for the state house. And the kinds of policies, therefore, he'll advocate for because of what that cult believes in, we can look at and say, those are the policies. They're a problem. They're crazy, right? But I'm not saying Adam Moore himself is literally Hitler, that we should go out there and he's a threat to our state. I'm saying his policies are. I'm saying his policies are a problem because I can detach a person from their policies. And I think a lot of conservatives and a lot of Republicans feel the same way. They can do the same thing. They can detach somebody from their policies. They can say that person, just because they believe these things doesn't make them a bad person. I disagree with them. But that doesn't mean they're a bad person. They're just confused. Meanwhile, on the left, they believe that the actual person is the problem. And you know this because when you ask a leftist that says, okay, Trump's literally Hitler, and you say, okay, what did Trump do in his first term that you would describe as literally Hitler? And they'll, generally speaking, 99% of the time, struggle to say a thing. Or if they do say a thing, they have like one thing, and it's something stupid that can be like, oh, well, that's how's that Hitler, this blah, blah, blah. Biden did that, Obama did that, Bush did that. Everybody's done that. Why is that a problem? And so because of this, and this belief side of things going on the left, it would naturally lead to this fine. So you have this natural progression of leftists that push people to believe that Trump is literally Hitler, coupled with just these DEI practices, this anti-police thought process, this pushing out of good people out of policing, and it's all come together and something horrible happened. Something failed. Yes, Trump himself was just grazed, but it came real close. But somebody did die because of this failure. Objectively, so Secret Service has one job, and they failed at it. And why did that happen? And that's kind of what we break down here. Now, in the wake of what should be a more unifying moment, it's quickly becoming the opposite of one. It's quickly becoming one where it's creating even more division. You think that we realize that our rhetorics, if we're not careful and talk about the policies while still, and don't dehumanize our opponents, you think that we would realize that, well, maybe we should be more careful about what we're saying, what we're doing. At least on the left side of things, like I said, the right kind of already doesn't attack the person, they attack the policies. But you'd be mistaken because, well, they still believe, the left still believes Trump's literally Hitler. And unless people like Joe Biden and AOC and all these people that fear-mongered come out and say, look, guys, that's just political rhetoric. Okay, don't get high on your own supply here. All right? Yes, it's political rhetoric, but it's not true. He's not actually Hitler. Don't try to kill him. Unless they come out and say that, people will respond with continued division. And that's why this moment won't be very unifying. It'll actually drive us apart. And the media certainly isn't helping, because even during the wake and directly right after the shooting, the media's inability to just not write a headline. They cannot write a headline that helps Trump at all. And so they're going to go ahead and write some of the most ridiculous headlines I've ever seen. MAGA responds with outrage after Donald Trump injured at Pennsylvania rally. Comes Newsweek. Here's CNN. Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he falls at rally. Here's the Washington Post. Trump escorted away after loud noises at PA rally. Here's MSNBC. Secret Service, Donald Trump safe after popping sounds heard at rally. This is the New York Times. Trump rushed off stage after chaos at rally. Here's a Fox 13 out of Memphis. Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he falls at rally. Here's an Indy Star tweet here. Trump removed from stage by Secret Service after loud noises startles former president and crowd. Here's one from another one from USA Today. Trump removed from stage by Secret Service after loud noises startles former president and crowd. Here's Sky News headline. This is after the effect, okay? Nothing justifies an assassination bid, but did Trump play a part in changing the rules of engagement? So we're already seeing their headlines about somehow, one, they try to blame Trump. That was that last one, blaming Trump for the fact that he was shot at. But then also, they can't write anything nice about the guy. And they don't see how they're part of the problem. They can't even come up with anything good to say. That's because they're in a tough spot. In fact, Biden's in a tough spot. Because he is. Because he has to admit that the Democrats have been fear-mongering about Trump and MAGA and everything else in order to turn down the temperature, which will only make his base either not turn out, enraged, upset. So he can't do that. But he also can't really keep going with the same rhetoric right away, at least. Or if he does do that same rhetoric, now the moderates in the middle, they're going to be reminded that, somebody got shot at here. This is not like a good thing for us to continue heating up hate against the individual. Hate their policies, but don't hate the individual. You'll notice that, you'll notice that there isn't actually from the right. Like, even when we gather in large crowds, take like January 6th, upset, angry, want to stop something from happening, right? A lot of the people there thought and believe still that the election was stolen, and that they wanted to stop the certification until a full investigation had been done because they believed that was coming on. And so, and there's people there who did violent things. Some people, most of them did not. But take a look at that entire situation. You literally have hundreds of thousands of people upset, angry, and yet somehow they don't kill a single person. And yet when we look at things like the Black Lives Matter protests and riots, and we see their responses, we see them shooting right-leaning people literally in the head. We see them going after people like Kyle Rittenhouse, who had to defend himself. We see a number of activities going on that are violent and out of control. And it's because they teach a belief of you're a victim. Somebody's victimizing you. It is not your fault that you're a loser with no family, with nobody who cares about you. You're a loser with nothing going on. You're a loser who has to call your cats your kids because you're 22 years old and already decided you're not having kids anymore. You're a loser who feels unfulfilled, who has nothing going on and no future. But that can't be your fault. Because if you take a moment to look internally and realize it's your fault, that you can change things, you can make your life better, you can adopt beliefs and systems, you can go to church, you can get married, you can have kids, you can do all kinds of things that give your life meaning and belief. You don't have to be listless like a ship with no sails, just floating on the ocean. You can control your own path. But if people believe that, well, they wouldn't be leftists. Because leftism is based on an idea that you're a victim and you need the government to take care of you. The moment you say, I can take care of myself, I have control over my own destiny, I have control over myself, you start to think like a conservative. You start to say, just leave me alone. Let me live my life. I don't need a big government taking care of me. And they can't have that. They can't afford for you to think that way. So you need to be a victim. And so you preach that on somebody who feels lost and trapped and like they're a victim. What are they going to start to do? They're going to, in their minds, defend themselves against those who are victimizing them. And, the people who affirm their beliefs that they're not a loser, that it's somebody else's fault, tells them that it's Donald Trump's fault. He's going to destroy their life now because they're nothing but a victim, so they're going to go shoot him. I mean, that's the belief process. This is where it leads to. So Biden's in a tough spot because he can't tell them that, hey, he's not really the problem, because that means you might be your own problem. And if you pick yourself up and take care of yourself, well, you might become a conservative. So they can't do that. And the far left supporters, as Biden's trying to be as middle of the road as he can, well, Biden's handlers, I don't think Biden even knows that Trump got shot at right now. The far left supporters go from conspiracy to anger. Conspiracy that somehow Trump set it up himself. So here's some on-the-ground reporting being done. And I downloaded this video. I'm going to be honest with y'all. I don't remember who the person is that made the video, and I wish I could credit them. And I'm really, really sorry. I can't remember who, but maybe you guys have heard it. Maybe you've seen it. If you know who it is, send me an email, info@theandrewshow.com. I'll make sure to credit them in my next show. But just listen to like a minute. They're on the street and talking to some people. Looks like they're in California somewhere. And listen to these leftists respond to the assassination attempt on Trump, how they're characterizing it. Take a listen.
It's a false flag.
False flag.
Yeah, false flag.
Somebody died and 2 people injured. What do you think about that?
False flag.
False flag.
I thought it was magnificently staged. It was professionally done. It almost looked real.
Wait. Staged by who?
Oh, by Mr. Trump, of course.
I think this whole thing is staged.
You think it was staged?
Yeah.
It depends on everybody's view. Yeah.
View of the assassination attempt? What do you think? Does it kind of depend on where you're standing, whether or not you agree with the assassination attempt or disagree with it?
I just don't see. I just don't see that being the truth. But that's my. I'd rather just not make any comment.
Really quick, what are you talking about the truth? What do you mean? Oh, you just don't believe it was an assassination attempt?
No.
Please don't. We're so anti-Trump. I don't even want to.
Was it a bad thing though?
I mean,
Was it a bad thing? Would you condemn it?
that he got shot at, of course.
Yeah, you never
right.
do that.
Of
That's
course,
all.
you don't do that.
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, that's really bad. No matter, yeah, exactly. You don't do that. Was it staged? Probably.
So there you go. There's some on the street people, just random people off the street, and most of them that he listened to basically right away were saying this is false flag. This was staged by Trump. Now you could say that there's some sort of inside work and everything else, but to say Trump is in on it is, I believe, not just a level of denial, but a level of ignorance that we should not tolerate in our society from people who get to vote. Okay, and what I mean by ignorance is, I shoot a lot. I know a lot of my listeners shoot a lot. Could you imagine, no matter who it is, okay, no matter who it is, it could be literally the best shooter in the world. Because let's say, there's been a lot out about this shooter and how he actually got cut from his high school shooting team because he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, right? But let's say he isn't the trigger man. Let's say you believe that somehow farther back out of everyone's view, but in the same line of sight, was another trigger man who's like an expert much farther away somehow that got an angle and could pull off the shot. Let's say you believe that, okay? And then let's say, so you have to take that, and then you also have to believe somehow Trump was in on it and knew. Would you trust, all of you who've ever shot a gun, would you trust the best shooter in the world to nick your ear from over at least 150 yards away? Because if the shot either came from that roof or farther back, so they have to be at least 150 yards away, would you trust them to nick your ear? You are 1 inch from it being catastrophic for you. 1 inch. Would you trust them? Because for those of you who are unaware, a 1 inch grouping at 300 yards, let's say, is really good. It's good. Like, extremely good. So keep that in mind that it's considered like you're an exceptionally good shooter. If at 150, 200 yards, you can do a grouping less than an inch. Not exceptionally good. You're a good shooter at 150 yards. Now, you go farther back, you go back to 300 yards. If you're less than an inch, that's great. Because any little thing can throw off that shot. And for those of you unaware what grouping means, it means that if you fired several rounds, they're within the same 1 inch area. There is no way to guarantee that level of precision, even at 100 yards, from some of your best shooters. And so I bring that up to say that the idea that Trump would be in on being shot in the ear from at least 150 yards away is ridiculous. His chance of dying is high. And on top of that, if you're doing this as a false flag in order to get Trump in office, let's say Trump isn't in on it, you set it up for him though, to get him in office, his chance of being killed by that, high. Very, very, very high. You would want your shooter to miss by more than he did. And so the point is that it was too close for this conspiracy theory of Trump set it up to be at all accurate. And anybody who's ever picked up a rifle and shot it before knows for a fact there is no way anybody who wants to live let somebody wing their ear an inch away just to become president again. You'd have to say, I either want to be president or I want to die. That would have to be your position at that point. So it ranges from that kind of conspiracy over to just a full-fledged meltdown. I mean, here's one leftist literally crying. I believe this has some language in it, so just, letting you all know it has some language. This episode's not going out on the radio, so don't have to bleep it. And I'm not going to go through the effort to. But but listen to this leftist literally crying on TikTok about the shooter missing. Take a listen.
How do you miss that? We don't miss those! Come on, man! Fuck! We don't miss those! One shot at greatness! To be mentioned in the history books! And you missed the shot? Fuck! What fucking shit?
That's not the only person that feels that way. I mean, here's a Kentuckian. This is a Bellarmine University who posted on social media a screenshot of the headline, "Trump safe after what sounded like gunshots at rally," with the caption, "If you're gonna shoot, man, don't miss." If you're gonna shoot, man, don't miss. Basically saying, I'm not saying you should shoot Trump, but if you're gonna shoot, make sure you hit him. Saying, hey, political violence, okay. And so Bellarmine University, after a few days, decided to suspend that person with pay. I ask why he's not just fired. Bellarmine's a private college. They're under no control. They don't have to worry about First Amendment lawsuits. They're not a government entity. Fire the guy. Why are you putting him on unpaid leave? You're hoping what? It blows over, you can bring him back? Ridiculous. Now, one of the responses I've seen from the right that I do want to talk about, I saw this from a few people, I even saw it on my own post, is, as we talk about political violence, they say, political violence is a part of American history. Political violence is how our country was founded. That's very American and patriotic, to wish death upon the kings and rulers and so on and so forth. And I do want to touch upon that, because in a way, they're correct, at least, that political violence did lead to this country. And the idea that never once will politics should lead to violence is obviously false. If politics ends up leading to people being trained off to the gulags, I sure hope you enact political violence before you get thrown on a train to the gulags. But I think the problem here is that people don't understand, one, they don't understand the story of our founding. They don't realize that our founding fathers for years and years and years tried everything they could before violence, because one, they understood they had to win over in the mind of the public, but they tried legal, they tried all kinds of things. In fact, shots didn't get fired really until the British tried to confiscate weapons. A lot of people, and there's different ideas. You could say whether it was, some violent protests that turned violent where British started shooting protesters, or whether it was when the British showed up in Concord and other places to confiscate firearms, and then that led to the shootings. Whatever you want to say, but the point is that the shootings didn't start until the government shot first, until they were trying to enact their tyranny with death. But until then, civil disobedience, until then, legal actions, until then, our current set up nonviolent systems is how you enact change. And for those on the left, and this is what, quite honestly, it's about here, is you don't get to do political violence just because you don't like the way one election turned out. You don't get to sit there. Now, if you want to sit there, going back to the January 6th thing, if you want to say, look, we're going to protest the certifying of this election, okay. But those who went into the Capitol and did violent things, generally speaking, in the wrong. Now, I understand their viewpoint, but there's a lot of elections out there more than just the president's, one. But two, we need to exhaust every single legal political option we have before we ever even think about violent interactions, and that's the problem. Take this shooter. that went after Trump. Dead, trashy, trash person, right? He was registered Republican. Some say he registered in order to, he'd be able to vote for the first time in a general election this year. So this guy who shot at President Trump and killed a bystander has never actually voted in a presidential election. This guy who shot at Trump and got a bystander, I believe, based upon what I've seen about his voting records, has never even voted in a primary, and yet thought, you know what I'm going to do? He donated $15 to one Get Out the Vote effort. And he said, you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to go to violence. What are you talking about? I say this to people all the time. When people start talking about, oh, you know, we're going to have a civil war and everything else. I'm like, you know, all these people that are arming up and ready for a civil war. When's the last time you donated $20 to a candidate running for office? When's the last time you knocked a door for a candidate running for office? When's the last time you voted in a primary, most of you? Not probably you guys listening, but most of these people. When's the last time you did any of those things? That is why I believe political violence is wrong. It's because most of the people that say we want to do political violence aren't even active in the legal, nonviolent political processes we have right now. You don't want political change. If you did, you'd get off your butt and knock a door. You'd donate a couple of bucks to somebody. I'm just, you know, you can hate me for saying it all you want to. I'm just calling it out here because I've been seeing people talk about, well, political violence is a great thing for America. America's founded on that on the right. And like I said, I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, we're nowhere close to that because all these people who profess they care so much, their actions show they don't take it very serious. Just my opinion. Like I said, I know some of y'all will disagree with me greatly. Feel free, you can email me, info@theandrewshow.com. But I said I had something I wanted to add to the conversation, and I did. Now, tomorrow, I'll be going over a little bit about the RNC convention and then also returning back to Kentucky politics. We'll have all that and more. Till then, we'll be seeing you.